of today's talk will be approximately 50 minutes of discussion from our speakers, followed by Q&A from you all. Please use the Zoom Q&A function. Also, please feel free to use the chat function. We love to know where you're all from. Grace, it's wonderful to have you with us from Charleston, South Carolina. For all those joining for the first time, the Zay Initiative was founded by Dr. Reem El Mutwalli, who with her team worked to preserve the cultural heritage of Arab dress through the collection, documentation, and digital archiving of Arab historical attire and their stories. The goal is to empower and sustain global cross-cultural dialogue. That is enough of the formalities. Without further ado, allow me to introduce you to Dr. Reem El Mutwalli, who in turn will introduce you to Patricia. Thank you, Dr. Reem.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back again to one of our sessions. Thank you very much for joining and for your support. And I'd like us to start because we have a really, really exciting session today. I'm particularly very excited about it because I love the artwork you're going to be seeing. So today we have with us a modern avant-garde artist, advisor, and mentor. Millns holds a BA with honors in fine art and MA in art and design history, with a studio based in the Middle East for over 38 years now. Her practice is based on identity and cultural significance, defined through the clothing, adornment, and olfactory heritage of the region. She is an elected fellow of the Royal Society of Art, London, and we are proud to say that we have her on our advisory board here at the Zay Initiative as well. She is also on the board of the American University of Dubai and a member of the IAPA UNESCO. She has represented the UK and at the United Nations, New York Women of the World. She joined Sharjah and Cairo Biennales, and she has quite an extensive collection. Public collections include United Nations, British Museum, British Council, British Commonwealth Society, and the Windsor, Bulgari, Salsali, and Sainsbury collection, and on many other national collections regionally, as well as private collections locally. Patricia, I see, first of all, I'm happy to welcome you here. And I think our journey is going to be really, really exciting. I see that symbolism of the culture, textile, and olfactory heritage of the region, and in particular, women's studies, have formed your work and informed it. And I believe it is this weaving of anecdotes from the art world, fashion, and feminism, along with the experiences that illustrate the diversity and depth of human connections, is what bonds your work with the work that we are doing here at the Zay Initiative. We both, in our own way, seem to be allowing viewers to enter into a world of seclusion, privacy, hidden expressions, sometimes misconceptions, and the nuances of individuality. We do it in a collective, documentative, and academic format. But you are doing it and taking us through a joyful, sensory, and all-encompassing artistic expression. I welcome you today here with us, and I would like to start with one of your first artworks. I know it is called Imra'a, correct, Patricia?
Yeah, yes. First of all, before I go on to talk about me, which is unusual, because that's what I normally do, I just want to say thank you so much for the inspiration that as a woman of Arabia, you have given me, because my work changed when I came to live in the Middle East. I became very inspired by the world of women, which as an artist in England, it wasn't necessarily a woman's world. So I changed and became very influenced by, although I was studying talismanic and totemic symbols, I realized that clothing, but in particular the clothing of women, was a vehicle of identity at a very theoretical level. connections. It had not just your status, but it had your job, it had everything about you, and it contained your story. That is why, with probably only about one exception, I do not use the figure, because the woman is obvious in her absence. Although behind this word, the concept was beauty, spirituality, intensity, and above all, in nearly all my works, it's fragrance, because that is what reflects the essential Emra, the woman, for me. And that's why the Zay Initiative is an inspiration, because it is the woman of Arabia. But fragrance and carrying stories tend to run through my work. And as most of my work is interactive, I like the participant being the viewer who walks through my work. And this particular work is all about the Arab woman's hospitality and home, which she carries within her. And what better way to express it to me than dress? So as this moves slightly in the AC or in the breeze, this gallery, it was Tashkil and they had an open door, everything moves and the fragrance starts falling through the mesh. In the next slide, Emma, you can see it probably a bit more clearer.
I just wanted to clarify to our listeners and viewers, this is metallic mesh, correct?
Is it?
And it's amazing how you managed to, like crumble it and make it move the way fabric does. I mean, that in itself is really, to me, is really, really, really wonderful. And then to incorporate what you were just saying, those scents, and I'll let you explain it further.
But I've been using steel mesh because I've done very large sculptures before that were very minimalist in their form. So I'd use this as samples in Europe. And then I started, and I love using materials that are commonplace. And 40 years ago, there weren't many art supply stores. And so this is the mesh that covers ACs, that covers, stops flies coming in through your windows. So this was readily available. So it was easy for me to use it. And it was in every home then. And the first one was like the rose water, and then you start going through the flowers, and then you go through all the culinary herbs, and the lumi, the dried lemons, and the last one was the coffee, the gahwa before you leave, and then you can enter it, and it just fills the room, and it's like an olfactory dialectic memory of that home for the viewer. Once I've done it, I've done the work. I want the viewer to experience it in their way. The shadows, I got this very purposely lit. So the shadows stand like women. So even though it's only the dress, the shadow is reflecting the woman that would wear the dress.
Yes. To go further and to show to our audience this crossing between what you are doing and what you are representing here and what we have, but in a different format through the Zay Initiative. If we take the next slide, Emma. Yes, we also are using these tools when taken from their fixed cultural reality and extending it to form simple linguistic units. This is what you do with your work. You don't require words to communicate. And here we have a silver adorned tunic dress. We call it here in the UAE Kandora. And it was gifted to us by a young lady with the name of Sheikha Swedi. And it is in memory of her grandmother, the late Hamda bint Mattar al-Murri. And it dates back to the 1980s. What was interesting, you were just explaining how you used the flowers and the coffee and the spices and so on and so forth to elicit this emotion, sort of a sixth sense, another sense that we would experience as we look at the artwork. This young lady, when she sent us this piece, she insisted her only condition was, and this is a silver adorned or embroidered piece here, and very rare to find actually. She insisted that we keep a small vial, which has a little bit of her grandmother's scent. And she said, you have to promise me that you don't separate them and you keep them together, so her scent will stay with her. And I see so much similarities, differently, but there are links, don't you think so?
Yeah, because it's my inspiration. So I'm taking a genuine inspiration. In fact, the person who bought, not the one that you've seen, but I showed this in a larger format in Kuwait, and one fabulous collector bought the installation, and in Kuwait I filled it mainly with roses, because roses are Kuwait, and she took the fragrance with her, and she now has a lifetime supply of this beautiful rose fragrance, so it must retain it. But for me, the fragrance is one element of clothing, but to me it's the story. And yes, I have enjoyed is an understatement for the experience I've had with women of this nation, and this particularly was Emirati women. And I like to use commonplace materials, and I also like to do very labor-intensive methods, because there is something very meditative in a labor-intensive method, and I know that I have the luxury not to do it. I know for many women, labor-intensive methods are not a choice. So, in honor of the women who don't have the choice, I did all this by hand stitched these. And each tea bag, these are tea bags, each tea bag has a story of one woman about her clothing. And then I put them inside. They are not for public. They're shown, but you don't read them. And again, this moves ever so gently, because here we have ACs. And the beauty of this is also that each story has her fragrance, but very delicate. It's not overpowering. This isn't 1,000 women at a wedding. This is a very understated piece, but it says in its simplicity, it just creates cultural metaphors in its simplicity, which is what I wanted. There's a relative validity in a story that is contained within the clothing, out of respect for the woman who shared it with me.
I absolutely love it. I love it, and it reminds, or it conjures memories of these women, as you said, who spend hours embroidering and stitching. If we look at the Palestinian women and the stories that you have behind every single stitch on their textiles, on their clothing, it just speaks to all of this, and it presents it in a very, very, to me, very modern and abstract format, and that's what I love about it. Emma, if you take us to the next slide.
1 second, I just want to say that, could we just go back for 1 second? It's only 1 second.
Of course.
The curator of this was May Barber, who is the most incredible curator when it comes to clothing, because she understands clothing. She just inspired me, and this is called Second Skin, and clothing for me is, and May understood that straight away. Sorry, I just wanted to mention May because she is such an inspiration to me, a fabulous Syrian architect and curator.
Yes, a wonderful lady, correct.
Yeah.
And if we take another step and go to the next slide.
Yes, please, yeah.
This is also one of my favorite artworks that you have, and I wanted, we have shown this video before, but we will show it because it has a lot of bearing to the context in which your artwork is made. And Emma, if you play it for us, please. We are going to be looking at an item that is original in the
Zay Initiative presents this fabulous Burqa Riyasi Bunyum. This presidential face mask was specially created in 1999 by Sheikh Hamda bint Muhammad Al Nahyan and gifted to the founder of the Zay Initiative, Dr. Reem El Mutwalli. The overall shape of the face mask follows the Yasi style, in direct reference to Yas tribe. The fabric is dyed using indigo, found in grades of bluish to purple, which is then rubbed and burnished to produce a metallic luster. The indigo would dye the skin of the wearer blue. For this reason, since the 1980s, masking tape and laterally prefabricated adhesive plastic sheets are placed on the back to protect the skin. The face mask's 18-karat gold embellishments are hand-sewn. The top line is composed of 23 round discs that resemble stars and are thus known as new or najum. They are followed by another line of larger discs known as huruf. The burqa is fastened to the head using a braided golden metallic cord known as shubuj. This represents a physical example of the traditional Arabic saying zina wa khazina, meaning beauty and wealth in one. The gold was employed to demonstrate style and reflect social status, but could also be melted down and sold in times of need.
And if we look here next to it, again, Emma, you flipped it too fast, yes. With this one, it is a niqab. It's not a burqa, it's more of a Bedouin
niqab, yeah.
face mask. Please take us through how the inspiration and the composition of this artwork.
Well, it's always fascinated me, as a Western woman, to see the niqab. And it was always one of the things that artists coming here, who come for, say, like, a month, they always do something on the face covering. And I avoided this for like maybe 30 years. I just didn't want to do the cliche. So the only way for me to do this was to meet with the women that I knew, or with the daughters of women, who women of my age may not have worn it, then their daughters or granddaughters. And so I just asked them, why would you wear this? What is it for? What does it mean to you? Out of respect, they're all women that I know. Every woman I talk to, I actually know. I didn't do the voice pop. I wanted to know these women. And their stories inspired me so much that I then started doing a series of work where their stories are written inside the stitching, and then I did a large installation using this, because the niqab sadly has become a very highly politicized and misunderstood face covering, removed from the fact that it is choice. And I wanted to do something that showed what it was to me, this very uplifting garment. So when you see the next one, like lots of the women said they were beautiful. And that's why, although I started using metal wires and stitched, I tend not to draw using pencils. I tend to use thread as a line. I started using the name, and the overriding concept was beautiful, Jamila. Not just the name, but the fact that women felt beautiful. And one of the artists who's worked with you, Reem, I know her very well, and we're the same age, and she looks fabulous, not one line.
You look wonderful. You look wonderful, but these are another.
She has no lines, so I know that it does make you look beautiful inside. But then the installation, which is next, this was the installation. I wanted to make them into actually just totemic urban sculptures. So I elongated the ties that would hold it, so that it looked like it was coming up rather than covering. It looked like it was there. And in fact, I use fashion a lot. And this idea I saw about 20 years ago in a Dolce & Gabbana store in Venice, where instead of legs, they'd use ribbons. And it was always in my head, one day I'm going to use this instead. So these ribbons anchored it to the ground, but it really could move like about 80 centimeters. It was a very freeing piece. And using white, for me, showed how spiritually uplifting this can be, because it is so negatively perceived. And in fact, it isn't. It's just, and I interviewed about 80 women, and nobody said anything negative.
Really wonderful.
And they were women I knew, but then every woman I interviewed wore it from choice, because I interviewed women in the Gulf.
Amazing. It is this inheritance of heritage from one generation to another.
To another.
It's lovely and wonderful, and the stories that are carried with them, which takes us to the next slide, where I love this group of work. I think you should explain them to our audience.
Well, these are based, like your collection does come from other countries, and I did a lot of work in southern Oman, in Salalah, and Salalah wear a heavy black velvet dress that has a very long train that removes your footprints as you walk along. But when the Queen of England came on her state visit, Queen Elizabeth II, I was asked to do an artwork for her. And I thought, this is my opportunity to do a performance piece. They trusted me, so nobody queried it until it was too late. But I didn't do an artwork, I did this. And I asked some fabulous women from this country, Emirati, they all got permission to do it because men would be in the room, the royal family, and they danced wearing these pieces. And I put symbols from the Emirates, symbols from jewelry, and then we wrote their names on it in Arabic and English, and they became something else. And these are the amazing, amazing women. And Sheikh Al Masroui is there, who was very young at the time, who's the most inspirational artist for the next generation. She's amazing. But these are women that trusted me enough to come and do a very simple, and it was called She's Leaving Home. And I got this music, so it was about marriage and how you're leaving home. And it was just beautiful. And I did explain to the Queen that this was a big deal, because these women don't normally do what I call performance, but which may be seen as a dance in public. And it was one of my favorite experiences in this period, to work with these women who were not professional performers or dancers, but who trusted me to do it. Great
So
women.
wonderful. So wonderful. And it made me, when I saw the slides, it made me think of this composition that we have collected through the Zayn Initiative. And we talked about it, and it inspired you in itself. And we here have the journey of this garment, which is called the Hashmi, which comes from Iraq. Before its arrival to the Zay collection, it was hand-stitched in Basra, approximately in the 1940s, between the 30s and 40s, and it was inherited by Maida Sabih al-Khudayri, the son of Yasin, the daughter of Yasin Pasha al-Khudayri, who was an Iraqi merchant and a politician, and served as a member of the Senate and advisory to King Faisal I in Iraq. Maida was born in Baghdad in 1924 and obtained a BA in Arabic language from Queen Alia University in Iraq. This is Maida, is the first lady on the left side. She is the grandmother today. It's a hand-me-down, the garment is a hand-me-down, probably first worn by her mother, Atiyah, daughter of Abdul Qadir Pasha al-Khudayri, who first established the Iraqi army and was decorated with a medal by no other than Gertrude Bell herself. Later, the ownership of this Hashmi was transferred from Atiyah to Maida, and then to her daughter in the middle, Alia Anwar Qaimakchi, who gifted it later on to her granddaughter, Maryam Stabraq al-Imam. And the granddaughter, by the way, just gave birth this past year to a fifth generation young lady. And when we were presented with this, to see a garment that has traveled not only distances, but eras, carrying the stories of every woman that wore it and, placed it on herself, and to hold it as a custodian for maybe the daughter of this young lady, Maryam, when she grows older and we can photograph her in it, to continue this tradition and to keep this prosperity throughout time, is basically it speaks to the work that you are doing as well, and that is what attracted me to the artwork, and I could see how you could be inspired by it, and I wanted to show it.
This piece is, I've already got the works in mind. I tell you, when I saw this piece, I'm going click, 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 I'm ready.
It's lovely, isn't it? Yes. And then we come to this one, which is another one of your installations that I really, really love.
Well,
we,
this
you know,
one-
walk us through it.
All right. This was, this caused a lot of controversy, but I know the games to play. But there became a fashion for women wearing these very big artificial headpieces, which I thought was absolutely ridiculous. I'm not ridiculous fun, just what are you thinking of? It didn't last long. I don't think this brought around its demise, but I couldn't take this seriously. So for the Sharjah Fine Arts Society annual show, I presented this. I asked women that I knew to give me one abaya, but leaving their fragrance on it, not to wash it, you know, have this beautiful fragrance. And then I just constructed these amazing, like Philip Tracy style hats in this, because I wanted people just to look at themselves. Are you serious? No, you couldn't be. And I loved making this. Although in the museum, I photographed it in the Fine Arts Society, but when it was shown in the museum, I usually place all my work in lines, in systems and lines, because the Japanese art is very influential in my very being. And I love the spaces between objects, the spaces between the tea bags, because to me, when you put people in lines or things in lines, the spaces is where everything has happened. You enter into something else. And I loved when I came to the Middle East that women wore black and men wore white. Suddenly I was in a place that was clean and bright and balanced. It was like they made it for me. You know me, everything's white or everything's black in everything. But this piece was, and it smelled fabulous because it was real fragrance. And I got clothing from royal family, I got clothing from everybody. But royal family meant that nobody could complain about the abayas.
Is it a abaya or a shayla?
It was an abaya. The shaylas are all, I'm so sorry I don't have the slide here, but the shaylas were folded and left on the bottom of each piece.
Well, your work inspired me to show this. It is an original silver article that we believe dates back to 1979, which is quite early for the UAE.
إماراتي silver veil شيلة منغدة تلي فضة إماراتية. This Emirati silver veil or shayla from the late 1970s sports a rendition of Prophet Muhammad's mosque at Medina in Saudi Arabia, featuring its minarets and the large central green dome topped with an exaggerated crescent and star. Up until the 1980s, pilgrims undertaking the Hajj brought these veils in Medina as personal souvenirs. They wore them on their return home, when entertaining or receiving guests, as evidence of the fulfillment of this personal religious milestone. This style of garment is well known throughout the Muslim world, although they are now very rarely seen. The base fabric is black tulle or tur. The silver adornment, niqda, was applied by hand directly to the fabric to create the design, an impressive 1 meter in length. Thin strips or straws of silver khus were threaded onto a flat white needle, then threaded into the mesh, tur, crisscrossed, and flattened by applying pressure with fingernails. This method was also used to make the surrounding silver geometric shapes that represent stars. Once the whole design was finally completed, the fabric was stamped down and passed through a roller to flatten the metal even more. This is a physical example of the traditional Arabic saying, zina wa khazina, meaning beauty and wealth in one. The silver fidda embroidery work, mnaghad, decorating this veil, was employed to show status and style, but could also be melted down and sold in times of need.
Beautiful piece, really beautiful. Anyway, Emma's moving us along.
I know, subtly. I think we've spoken about the female world and the feminine world, and you have had some installations and many artworks that relate to the male figure and to men's world. And I think this is an example of that.
Yes. I just felt, I shouldn't be so biased, but women's clothes, I am biased. But I love the simplicity of the black, and I love the simplicity of the white. And the men's gutra and the gal, but the gutra has fascinated me. And for the first Art Dubai, all those years ago, I was asked to do a small installation, but I then got more space. I got more space myself, and I made it large. This was 500 Emirati men that I met, or spoke to, or contacted, or brothers and cousins, and it was called Noor, light, and it worked. It was seen during the day, but it was you could walk through it, and they were on a cross section, and it was you just got lost within this. And this is what I mean about the spiritual space. When you enter a piece like this, physical space just dissolves, and you enter into, for me, what actually matters more, which is the space where nothing is happening. And that's what I love about this. You see a group of women, and it's the spaces between their abayas. You see a group of men, and it's the spaces between them that makes them stand out. And this was just called Noor, and I used the water to add another dimension. I placed it specifically where you'd have this reflection.
It's beautiful. And if we take the next slide, I think we have a detail, close-up details. Is this calligraphy?
It's calligraphy that says Noor. It's never shown up in too close a detail because you realize how bad my Arabic handwriting is. But it was also, I got a dance group from Hatta to do the Yola wearing it as their headgear, and with much persuasion and pleading, please, would they wear it just for one performance to open the Art Dubai section that was in DIFC, and they did. And it was, beautiful. Thank you.
I paired that with this piece, although this is the female attire. But I thought, again, this matter of repetition, you see the repetition of the triangle figures, you see the repetition of floral motifs, you see the repetition of the buttons, and so on and so forth. It is carried through our clothing, it is carried through our heritage, our history, and so on. And this is a very interesting piece that came, it's a Moroccan piece, and it goes back to the 1920s, but it came to us from a European provenance. It used to belong to Mrs. Eleanor Arno Pons, an ethnographer and tribalist and an Asian expert. It belonged first to her mother, Renee van der Leyden. She was a well-known actress who lived in Amsterdam, and she was a frequent traveler and bought beautiful and original pieces to wear in her films, such as this example here. Some of her films were produced by her groundbreaking filmmaker brother, William van der Leyden. It's interesting how something that was used in Europe, inspired from our area of the world, takes a whole round circle and then comes back again to here.
Back again to my work. I mean, I studied, my master's is in Islamic art. Well, my doctorate will be in Islamic art, and that was the inspiration. Now, you cannot have the gutter without the agal. And it fascinated me, again, 500 men.
This is my favorite.
Different men. These are different men. I have a very good mailing list, that's all I'm saying. But I asked men, you see, with the women's clothing, I leave the messages inside, because we keep our messages inside. We don't need Chatham House rules, but we keep our stories to ourselves. Women discuss personal things, political things, but they're private. Men tend to say their words out. So I asked men, just very simple questions, because in simplicity you can gain more information. I just asked them how many gals they had, why did they still wear it when they could tie a shamag easily, and wouldn't come off with the seat belt or anything like this. Why would they wear it? And that was all I asked. Why do you wear it? What do you feel about wearing it? And I got the most honest answers. And their names were written in Arabic, but the story was in English. And it was only meant to be up for a week while the big British Museum Word in Art, because the British Museum have some of my written works, not text. Well, they have some textile as well, but this one stayed up I just couldn't let it down, and then it went all around the Gulf, touring. But each one, if a man had a tarbouche, then I used that. I didn't realize that men had so little. Even though I'd been in the Middle East a long time, I thought they would have quite a lot. They had a lot of gutras, but very few gals. Maybe 2 maximum. Some had 3. And I just hung it and you could walk and lift this and read it and know who the man was. That is a fabulous one.
Well, actually, I love the image on the left because it shows the proportions between, I love the repetition of the gal with the repetition of that building behind it, the line formats, the architectural format that takes you up as if you're going up to heaven. And for me, it has some sort of poetic, even the lights on the floor, they create or they sort of.
Well, I hung it over the lights because my budget, I wanted to hang it very specifically. So my budget went in the positioning of the hanging, the making of it. So I've used, it's in DIFC on the gate. So it goes into up. So I used their lighting. It was there.
I love it. And I paired it with this piece, which is again a representation. I mean, I personally love how from the aesthetic external experience to the repetition of a number of spatial patterns that you create here. Your work interacts with the viewer to guide them beyond just a surface illusion.
It has to, yes.
Likewise, I think the stories captured within the Zay collection act in a similar way, such as this headband and its associated abaya that date back to the 1930s. Originally, this one comes from Syria because Syria was renowned for the silk and the production of gilded abayas, and they were held in high esteem. This is called the shutfa, by the way, and it is different to the agal that you use. The shutfa is only worn by the higher echelons of society, mainly the kings. I'm sure you remember King Faisal of Saudi Arabia. He was very famous for wearing that shutfa, similar in this style. This headband comes with a very touching story. A doctor was crossing a bridge in Paris, and when he was crossing, he saw a young man was about to jump. And the doctor was good in his job, and he prevented this young man, dissuaded him from committing suicide. It turned out to be that this young man was an emir's son from Libya. And as we researched the matter, we think it is probably the property of Idris al-Sanusi. And he gifted it to this doctor as a form of gratitude, as a khil'a form. He took it as a abaya, which was, it is a custom that is embedded in Arab and Islamic tradition, whereby somebody of a higher stature bestows a valuable piece of aba or cover to a person for a good deed in recognition of their work. And after the rescuer's death, the son sold these 2 items many years later, and we happened to be there and we knew about them, and we hastened to add them to our collection. So again, it is this collection, gathering of these stories from here and there and adding them to the article, which unites, I think, and sort of crisscrosses between what you do and what we are doing at the Zay initiative. And I just love that.
an old piece. Because I studied Islamic art and Islamic history, I got very fascinated with in fact, when we were both very young, Dr. Venetia Porter from the British Museum, when she was doing her doctorate, we were both studying in Kuwait at the museum there, the Islamic Museum, and I got fascinated with talismanic symbols. And this is based on the actual size, and everything is correct. It's based on talismanic shirts. It is not stitched, it's hand done by me, as they would have been done with inks onto the fabric, and then it would have been worn by the man with his armor on top of it as he went into battle. And I did this series. This was a show in the British Museum, and then they fortunately took a line off them because it stays in its symmetry, like armies, like men in lines going in. This was when I showed a small version of it, because there's 90 pieces. This is that was shown in DIFC. Oh, just after the opening.
Again, I paired it with a piece from our collection. It was gifted to us by Linda McConnell when she married in Bahrain in the 1930s, and she is the wife of a UAE diplomat, and she lives here in the United Arab Emirates. And she chose two pieces from her wedding torso to give to us. And I think it carries in the same line that you were just depicting, talismanic symbols and notions. This one is, that one was to protect you from bad and ill health and war, because you wear that talismanic shirt. Generally, men wore it when they went into war. It was a
battle, yeah.
And here it is a symbol of prosperity, new life, using the peacock, using the blue color, using the repetitive medallions and so on. All symbols that foretell good fortune and a new life and the union of two and a beginning of a new life. So I thought these two really work together to bring this point across. And this one of my other favorite works that you have.
Right, well, this one is, I love the whole idea. I mean, to me, Adornment, especially now, we're living in a world that is even more obsessed with appearance. And the body has somehow, it's becoming a performance of self. And so that's why I wore one of the pieces. But inside, these are tea bags. Inside every tea bag is a story by a woman. And one of the things is like your tea. You have your tea in the afternoon, or you're in the majlis and the tea and the chat and the gossip and everything, and you sort everything out, your political, and everything's done. And so I use physical tea bags, and the women's stories initially, the one on the right, the women were using the tea. I used the tea bags and did it. In the second ones, I actually put the thing very carefully inside. These are the same type of tea bags that are used. And then, this was another Art Dubai piece, I decided to put these in a jeweler's there was nothing to say, it was just a surprise. So instead of seeing what people think of as precious, as, gold and silver and diamonds, what is more precious than somebody's story, than somebody's hidden story? This doesn't cost, the material do not cost anything, but the stories that are inside this. So by deconstructing the woman into her stories, I could reconstruct her into a totemic urban sculpture that says more about her than gold and silver. And the bottom ones, I just use that same wire, and it's like this, it's the embroidery, it's the richness and fullness that just say who we are as women.
Yes, and
I love these, the color of these is so rich.
I thought these carry the story that you are trying to express, because the women carry all these symbols through the embroidery work. We have an example from Yemen, and we have one from Tunisia. They all date back to the early century, past century, and they represent these symbols and these notions that you carry throughout. I mean, you managed to capture it so beautifully in your artwork, and I love it. And this is another one of the pieces that you have, and run us through
This
it.
was gained from a show in Tashkil. Tashkil are very, very supportive to, letting you try installations. And this was a piece that was all part of the collar. I love the neck. I love the idea that it connects the body to the brain. There's something about this area, as wrinkly as it is, that's why collars and necklaces, I think, are so important. Also, you carry your fragrance in certain spaces. And so the neck is always fragrance. And this was just a whole series of, and I chose images. The writing comes from high fashion magazines. People don't understand, the women under the abaya is a very fabulous dressed woman, traditional or non-traditional. And these are high fashion magazines in Arabic. So it's not all you think.
Well, we paired that one with another piece of ours that speaks to the work that you've done. And let's have a few minutes to watch it.
I love your videos.
Emirati gold coin embellished, combination overgarment tunic. Thob Kandora Riyasi, Emiratiya. Gifted to the Zay initiative by Sheikh Hamda bint Mohammed Al Nahyan, maternal aunt to the UAE President Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed Al Nahyan. This is an Emirati gold coin embellished, combination overgarment tunic, Thob Kandora. The combination Thob Kandora evolved post-1990s as two-in-one overgarment thob and tunic Kandora attached together at the neckline. This example is adorned in 18-karat gold as an added status feature and thus worn by the elite. The French silk paper thin, chiffon fabric on the overgarment thob is striped in turquoise, purple, and gold brocade, zarri. The thob is hand-embroidered in metallic gilded thread on the neckline, central axis and main vertical hemlines, as well as the sleeve cuffs of the inner tunic Kandora. The embroidered areas are further encrusted with 3 types of hand-stitched 18-karat gold platelets, some of which resemble old embossed coins known as mashakhis or huruf, and small gold discs with nail-like convex protrusions resembling stars or nujum. These are further accentuated with smaller, round, metallic, silver studs with diamante crystal centers. Over time, the cleavage opening has widened to reveal more of the neckline and upper chest area, accentuating any trendy jewel-encrusted necklaces in Western style. This garment represents a physical example of the traditional Arabic saying, Zina wa khazina, meaning beauty and wealth in one.
It speaks so much to this piece, and I want you to take us through it.
Right. I actually really enjoy my work. I really do.
I see that. I see it, and I love it.
And there is a phrase in Western weddings, which I've heard more than once. Let's just stop there. And it's all my worldly goods. All my worldly goods I thee endow. I don't really agree with that, but I asked women to give me one white object. And this was on the idea of the necklace, the woman carrying all her worldly goods around her, not giving them away. The Arab woman is not that stupid to keep your goods around you. And I just wanted to make them in a very 21st century fun way. So they're children's pins, they're nappy pins, they're toys, they're bits of bills from clothes. They're just all my worldly goods. And I just wanted to, and I wore this as a necklace to a big event in New York, and people thought it was hilarious. It's just all my worldly goods. It's of no value except to me. And it just symbolized the Arab woman who very cleverly wears all her worldly goods.
I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed this whole discussion and this whole session, and I thought it would be wonderful to culminate it with this slide, because you spoke about how we carry our wealth, we carry our personal individuality as well as whatever we own in this world. And that was the custom of these Bedouin women. And we saw examples of it. We saw examples through your work as an interpretation of contemporary art. And we saw it in its original format through the collection that we've got. And I thought we would end with this very, very touching story. When I was doing my PhD, a very long time ago, I was researching information, and I found at the British Archives a magazine that was published in Egypt by the name of Al Arabi, and many of the Arabs would know this magazine. And in it, there was a report that was done in 1968 on the area, which is the area of Al Daid and Kalba and all of the Northern Emirates area. And this image on the right was photographed of a woman, and I was impressed with it because I could find some source that gives me an illustration of that clothing of that time. But fast forward to just 5 years ago, by chance, when I found this image, we published it in my book, which is Sultani, that you see in the bottom there, that documents dress and adornment in the United Arab Emirates. And as I was visiting one of the sheikhs in Chelba area, and we were talking and I was showing her the book, she pointed out to this image and she said, "Do you know her?" And I said, "Of course, on the contrary, no, I don't know her. This is the story how I found her." And she said, "Well, I know her. Her name is Jamila." So we managed to locate who this woman was and what was her name. And lo and behold, her daughter still lived there, who is about my age. Jamila passed away, but when I met her daughter, the Sheikha was very kind that she allowed this or facilitated this meeting between the two of us. And Jamila saw what we have produced, and she said, my mother swore to the day she was dying that she was photographed by a famous magazine. And we would think she was joking, or she was just making up stories. And now you proved her point. So I asked if I could have, her mother had died in around 2012. And that's why I dated it to 2012, because we don't know exactly when she had this kandora. So I asked for a kandora and a burqa of her mother's so that we would keep in our collection. And to me, it is very touching that somebody I never met, I never knew, lived and was photographed by somebody from Egypt, was documented and saved in British archives. Then suddenly I come back and I find pieces of that woman, her scent, her essence, her memory, her name, and we can compile it all and put it into an archive that is, because of technology, because of the life that we are living today, can be reached and can be looked upon on a global level. She never knew in '68 that she's going to be globally known because of a digital archive that we are working on. And I wanted to show this because it just exemplifies the idea and the effort and the work and the importance of what is being done.
But it's these stories. It's these stories. I mean, people who know me that I always wear one little turquoise ring. I never, even if I'm not wearing silver, I wear it around me. And I was wearing this ring that I bought years ago, and I was wearing it in a village. And an older lady covered everything. We had no language in common. Really simple Bedouin woman coming in to sell dates, to buy dates, called me. She called me to a small house, and she had the matching pair.
Wow.
Because these had been sold when her mother passed. Rings are worn, you have a matching set,
Yes.
And I bought 5. She had, as the sister, the other 5. So I took these off to give her them. And she went, no. She knew that I would keep them safe. She gave me the other 5. Who would have ever thought? In the middle of nowhere. And I bought them in Kuwait. And these were Omani. In a village in Oman. How they got to Kuwait, nobody knows. It's these stories that make me look forward to the rest of the 40 years have gone like that. I'm looking forward to doing more with those stones you just showed me tonight.
Well, so I want to really thank you. This has been wonderful. Preparing for it for the past few weeks really has opened my eyes. I was enjoying your artwork, and it touched me on many levels, and I could see the crisscross of inspiration that can go between the two. And I thought it was very important to showcase this and show it to our audience. I hope you are enjoying it as much as I am. And I think we need to give Emma the floor because she
must be going crazy with us.
Yes,
Not at
overtime.
Not at all, not at all, not at all. I think you've both been wonderful, just so inspiring. I have to remember that I have to move the slides on as I get immersed in the stories as ever. I'm so lucky to spend so much time with 2 such inspirational women. Both of you do art, Dr. Reem through your dress and your collection, and obviously Patricia through your wonderful installations. So please, everyone, feel free to put some Q&A to the audience, to Patricia and Reem. The Q&A function is on your app function. A couple have come through. First of all, Patricia, obviously everyone's very aware that it is COVID times, but when is your next project? When is your next installation that people can go and see?
Well, there was one that was meant to happen in March in 1971 in Sharjah that will be for another year. But while I was waiting, I don't just wait. I did something, so it had to be something smaller, a series of small objects. And they're behind me. I'm working. I have no idea. I don't want to worry about post-COVID. I'm just working in COVID, and when things are ready, I don't worry much. Things always fall into place logically for me. Everything happens naturally. And I know that the next exhibition will happen when it happens, but I'm ready. I am working. I'm on my 51st piece today. So I am working on small little objects made of paper that I got in supermarkets that will be the next one.
You are really a woman after my heart.
Wow. Just incredible.
I love it.
Dr. Reem, somebody obviously has noticed that during the presentation that you can donate articles of clothing to the Zay Initiative. Can you just elaborate on that a little bit further?
Well, I encourage you to go to our website and look up the section on collection, and it gives you more details on it. What we do is we encourage people to send us an article of clothing. We have even some who had sent us jewelry, not only clothing. As you saw, some of these dresses were gold, and it is whoever you want to commemorate, whoever you want to keep their memory alive. And we take anything from a small ring to a medallion that would have sat on somebody, a pin that would have sat on somebody's chest. But what is most important is that we would like the story, and if we can find imagery, the person who wore them as they wore that piece. If not, then we would like the image of that person. Yeah. We work with every individual article that is donated to us, and we welcome any form of article that can come to us, and we're more than happy to exhibit it through, we don't just exhibit it through the digital format. The digital format can reach global audience, but we also do exhibitions on a smaller level because we're dealing with textiles and we need to preserve them. So we don't leave them, exposed to the elements for a long time in order for us to keep them for a longer period and make sure that they sustain the elements. So please, I'm excited on that, and I really would love anyone who would like to donate. You are more than welcome to do that, and just go to our website and we'll follow up with you.
Thank you, Dr. Reem, or just email me, emma@thezay.org.
Yeah, that's even easier. I have to take the long way around.
Sorry, Dr. Reem, you are an amazing inspiration, but you can just email me. Also, Patricia, how did you first become interested in the Arab culture all those years ago? You're clearly so inspired by it, and it's such a wonderful story.
Well, I did my master's in medieval art, and you cannot study the medieval period without realizing what the West owes to the Arab world. All our inventions, language, everything, navigation. So that fascinated me. You can't do one without the other. It fascinated me to learn more. And the only way to learn more about a civilization is to go to that civilization. So I was doing my doctorate in the National Museum of Kuwait, because the Al Sabah collection is it still is. It is an amazing collection.
Correct.
And also coming from the West, where museums were very crowded, packed with objects, I went into this big, bright, open space, and that was the welcome as well as the collection. I was met at the airport with a handful of jasmine. Like, where in the world is that going to happen to you? And they asked me to stay, and I did, and that's where I am.
Well, we're very lucky.
The women of Arabia have kept me here.
Very lucky. Thank you for staying.
Indeed.
And I'm still inspired. But it's the women of Arabia who have made my life such a joy in the last 40 years.
Wonderful.
And the men. And some of the men. I'm going to be finished after this. And the men. The people of Arabia.
Just a couple, just one more question, I think, before we close it up. They're coming in all directions on all sorts of different forms of it.
I'm getting questions on this.
No, well, Patricia, why don't you take over as Q&A? Wonderful. Please, go ahead. Go ahead. Patricia, I don't know whether you're allowed to say, but what is the next piece of work that you're going to work on, and what will be the inspiration behind that piece of work?
Well, the inspiration of it was hospitality, diafa, the giving. And so I'm using the papers that normally you wrap food with. And I have done a whole series of bowls that are wrapped in these papers. And these are the small objects that I'm making, because I was able to make them in the the restrictions of my home. I didn't have to leave. I couldn't leave during lockdown. And so it will be on the idea of hospitality. But I mean, things like this that I've shown before, these are coffee filters. Thank you, Algarairs, for giving me all your coffee filters. Thank you. So these are the coffee filters that they stopped their machines to allow me to have.
But I need you to work on something with us. We have to collaborate on something.
I have to, because tonight, the joy of doing this is the inspiration that is continual. I never stop, because everything you meet. But there is one thing, thank you for allowing me to be on the board of the SAE. But the one thing is, I work with fabric. I know how fragile it is. And it's not just my inspiration as an artist, but I think before the collections of clothing, literally they disintegrate. We need to keep the SAE collection going, so I hope people are very supportive of the SAE collection. We really do need this to stay for me and everybody else. We really do. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Just one last question, but they're flooding in. But Grace is such a wonderful supporter of us, I must include her question. She said, scent evokes so much emotion. How did you decide to include scent?
Me?
Patricia, yeah.
I couldn't exclude scent. This region is where I learnt about fragrance. My grandmother wore fragrance. Less so my mother, but women of that sort of Victorian period wore scent. But it had gone, and when I came to the Middle East, one Kuwaiti young man, who's now a very senior man, so I won't tell who he was, he would take me in the evenings to talk about scent, to mix scent, to show scent. And I am, blessed to know the Luta family, who are beautiful scent. And you have to know scent to learn about scent. It evokes so much. It's not just a spray and you're off. It's building layers of complex, like stories. The women's fragrance is their stories. Every woman is so different. They may wear Western perfume, but they're wearing it underneath. And the hospitality of giving fragrance as one leaves the house, or the welcome of rose water, these are things that just fill my spirit. And fragrance is an olfactory pleasure. It's a sensual pleasure. It's a basic pleasure. It just makes life. I walked into work this morning and one of my Emirati friends, Mariam, walked by. And as she walked by, her fragrance made my day. She doesn't even have to know that. Just as she walked past, the fragrance that lingered in the air made me go, oh, how could I exclude that sense?
Wow, there's just a wonderful question that's just come through. Following the point just now, urgency of conserving the textile heritage, Patricia, how do you deal with the impermanence of scent in artworks?
I don't.
Well, that's a fantastic. You have no control, Patricia. You have no control.
It changes. But like I said, Reem showed one piece where the lady left the little vial, the glass vial of perfume. Some installations require the owner or the museum to have the fragrance, and then I get enough fragrance made to supply it, or I use a fragrance that is more mass-produced, then it can. But I've also done exhibitions or installations where there isn't even an object. You just go into a room and the fragrance is in the room. It's just sprayed every now and again. So things that are floating and ephemeral are floating and ephemeral. But textiles are not. They need to be preserved.
Wow. Well, we're over time as ever, but we have, given that you two are both wonderful speakers, we have kept it very short and brief, but it's been such a fantastic session. The comments coming in are just incredible. So Patricia, thank you, and also obviously to Dr. Reem. You've just brought this evening to life, or this morning to life for some people over in America.
Yeah, this morning I'm getting a lot of WhatsApps from America.
Yeah, and we've also had somebody joining from China as well. So hello, very good night to the Far East tonight. But so to you, the audience, we really hope you enjoyed being with us again. This is our 7th webinar in the series. We are here, same time, same place in 2 weeks on the 20th of October, when Dr. Reem will be joined on the sofa by the founder of the Islamic Fashion Design Council, Aliyah Khan, for Heavenly Body's modest fashion industry. Please head to our website, www.thezay.org, for the full details, and have a really fabulous day or evening wherever you are in the world. Thank you so much, and thank you for joining us. Oh, and Dr. Reem.
Yes, I was wondering, I have a question, and that is, are we going to have the same timing for next, because of the change of the hours?
Yes. The clocks go back on the 30th of October, so we'll move on. So the next one will be the same time, so 6 p.m. UAE, 3 p.m. London, and I believe it's 10 a.m. New York for next one.
Yes. Thank you.
And then the week after will be different.
No, truly my pleasure. My pleasure.
Thank you very much. And thank you, our audience, for having the patience and for listening to us. And giving us the time and the space to say what we wanted to say. Thank you all for joining.
Thank you. Bye-bye.